Sveika Lietuvos krepšinio bendruomenė, sveiki Lietuvos krepšinio sirgaliai, su jumis Lietuvos krepšinio lygos organizuojama LKL konferencija 2022. Šių metų LKL konferencijos tema yra krizių valdymas sporto industrijoje. Anksčiau krizių valdymą ir krizės sportą suvokėme pakankamai standartiškai. Dažniausiai krizės krepšinėje apimdavo tokias situacijas kaip klubo finansus, komplikuota finansinė situacija, rėmėjų paieška, vėluojančias algas ar net klubo ant bankroto slenksčio išgelbėjimą. Taip pat būdavo sprendžiamas ir prastų rezultatų pasekmės. Žaidėjų, trenerių keitimas sezono metu yra pakankamai dažnas reiškinys ir savotiškai kelia tam tikras sportinės krizės sezono metu. Taip pat iš klubo vidaus kartais pasitaiko skandalingų išplaukiančių informacinių žinučių, komunikacijos krizių, kurios irgi yra neišvengiamas mūsų sporto industrijoje. Tačiau pastarieji porą metų iš esmės pakėlė krizės savoką į dar didesnį lygį. Ne tik kasdienybėje, bet ir sporte susidūrėme su krizėmis, kurių sprendimo būdų nerasite jokiose vadovėliuose. Iš pradžių tai buvo pasaulinė pandemija, kuri beprecedentiškai surakino ir pasaulinį sportą, pradedant nuo įvairių lygų, nuo įvairių turnyrų, iki net atrodo neliečiamų olimpinių žaidynių, iki pat mūsų kasdienybės gyvenimo, kuris iš esmės pasikeitė ir iki šiol mes jaučiame to pasekmes. Dabar, be kita ko, mes susidūrėme su karu Ukrainoje, karu artimoje šalyje, kuris irgi tiesiogiai keičia ir turbūt dar keleriems metams į priekį keis mūsų sporto industriją. Taigi, krizės sporto industrijoje yra neišvengiamas dalykas. Didesnis ar mažesnis, jos ištinka net ir geriausias organizacijas. Bet krizių suvaldymas ir krizės padarinių organizacijų minimalizavimas dažniausiai priklauso nuo lyderių, kurie tas krizės sprendžia. Sėkmingais lyderiais turbūt galima vadinti tuos, kurie geba greitai identifikuoti krizę, greitai ją sureaguoti, komandinių darbų surasti efektyviausius jos sprendimo būdus, juos pritaikyti, analizuoti, keisti, tobulinti ir eliminuoti arba maksimaliai sumažinti krizės padarinius. Mūsų auditorijoje, šios konferencijos auditorijoje yra esamų, būsimų sporto komandų vadybininkų, taip pat sporto studentų ar žmonių, kurie domisi šią industriją ir iš esmės yra krepšinio sirgaliai sporto mylėtojai. Ir visi kartu su Lietuvos krepšinio bendruomenė pabandysime iš pirmų lūpų išgirsti, kaip su tomis krizėmis tvarkėsi savo sričių specialistai. Taigi šiandien tarp mūsų pranešėjų turėsime Kauno Žalgirio krepšinio klubo psichologą Andrių Lechovičių, taip pat GO3 sporto partnerysčių ir sporto padalinio vadovą Baltijos šalyse Raimondas Zeps ir pakviesime į diskusiją su Europos krepšinio meistrais, dabar užimančiais svarbes vadovaujančias pareigas įvairiose Europos krepšinio organizacijoje. Taigi bus pavyzdžiui Eurolygos žaidėjų asociacijos vadovas Bošteinas Nagbaras, Tel Avivo Maccabi komandos vadovas Nikola Vaičičius ir Liublianos C9 Olimpijos sporto direktorius Sani Bečirovičius. Nenoriu prižadėti, nenoriu prisikalbėti, bet galite užduoti klausimus pranešėjams ar diskusijos dalyviams mūsų YouTube transliacijos live komentarų skiltyje, kuriuos pabandysime atrinkti ir užduoti, jeigu mums tai leis laikas. Diskusijos dalyviams iš užsienio būtų pageidautina geriausiai, jeigu tos klausimus užduotumėte anglų kalba. Taigi, be didesnių įžangų, pradėkime nuo Žalgirio psichologo Andriaus Lechovičiaus, kuris nuo šio sezono pradėjo darbuotis su Žalgirio komanda, bet į didįjį krepšinį atsineša didžiulį žinių ir patirties bagažą, kurį Andriau ir prašysime dabar mums pradaryti. Taigi, Andrius Lechovičius ir jo pranešimas sporto psichologija pamatas padedantis įveikti sunkumus.
Sveiki visi, labai malonu už kvietimą. Pabandysiu trumpai apžvelgti būtent apie tą pamatą, kuris padėtų mums įveikti krizės. Gaila labai to trumpo laiko, kurį aš turiu, bet pabandysiu, bent jau truputį atskleisti, būtent kas yra ta sporto psichologija. Tai iš karto ir keliaujame. Nes dažnu atveju mes įsivaizduojame, kad sporto psichologija yra tai, kai žmogui darosi labai sunku, negali su savim kažkaip susidoroti, kiti sako, reikia kažką daryti su galva ir panašiai. Nors realybė truputėlį yra kita. Sporto psichologija yra tokia dalis kaip ir fizinis, taktinis ar techninis rengimas. Tai šitoje situacijoje mes pabandysime paaiškinti, ką mes darome su sportininkais, būtent, kad jiem būtų lengviau pasiekus rezultatą. Nes dažnu atveju mes įsivaizduojame sportą, kad mums reikia pasiekti tam tikrą rezultatą. Kitaip tariant, tai galėtų būti panašu į tokį stalo žaidimą kaip 120. Aš nežinau, ar jūs matot mano skaidrės. Jeigu matote, tai yra toks dalykas, kad visi galvoja, kad jeigu aš išmesiu kauliuką ir pasieksiu 120, man pasidarys tik tai lengviau. Tai šitoje situacijoje problema yra tada, kai mes pasiekėm 120, lentą mums supakuoja ir atneša naują ant stalo ir sako, ir dabar 120. Tai šitoje situacijoje, kad sunkumai, su kuriais mes susitarėm, mums dažnai atrodo, kad tai yra tos kopėtėlės, nežinau, ar visi šitą žaidimą atsinat, bet galbūt kas yra vyresni, tai tikrai atsimena, tai jie galvoja, kad tie sunkumai yra tos kopėtėlės, kad tos krizės yra tos kopėtėlės, bet iš tikrųjų taip nėra. Iš tikrųjų tai yra, kad pasiekus 120 mes gauname naują lentą ir mūsų vėl reikalauja, kad mes vėl išmestume 120, kad mes pasiektume tą viršūnę. Tai reiškia, sunkumai, su kuriais mes dažniausiai susidurime, yra tada, kai mes kažką pasiekėm. Tai reiškia, mes turime jauną sportininką, jauną krepšininką, kuris yra savo komandos lyderis, tai mes reikalaujam, kad perėjus į kitą komandą, kad jis vėl rodytų tos rezultatus. Tai reiškia, spaudimas auga, yra didelis klausimas, kada mes sustosime. Ir dažnai, netgi pradedant man dirbti seniau su olimpinė rinktinė, buvo toks dalykas, kad mano tikslas yra pasiekti kuo aukščiau, nuo to man darysis vis lengviau. Tačiau dirbant tiek su krepšininkais, tiek su kitų šakų sportininkais buvo toks dalykas, kai jų paklausė, ar dabar yra lengviau, jie sakydavo, ne, dabar yra sunkiau. Kuo tu aukščiau kyli, to yra didelis dalykas, kad tu žemiau ir leisis. Tai va tas pasiekimas 120 ir būdavo ta problema, kad stalas gražėja, lenta gražėja, išmetimas kauliuko, mes nekreipiam dėmesio, kaip mes įmetam, mūsų tikslas buvo pasiekti 120, kas darosi, mums pradeda drebėti rankos, mes bijome jį išmesti, nes mes nekreipiam dėmesio, kaip mes atliekam veiksmą, mūsų tikslas buvo pasiekti rezultatą. Ta labai puikiai galėtų atspindėti, netgi dirbant su krepšininkais, sako, aš noriu, kad mano, pavyzdžiui, tritaškių taiklumas pasidarytų 40% ir kai aš jį pasieksiu, man nuo to bus geriau, nes, jau statistikos protokolė aš matysiu visi, kad aš metu 40%. Kas atsitinka pasiekus 40% taiklumo su sportininku, jis netgi pradeda nesimti metimų, kurių jis buvo seniau norėjęs simtis, todėl kad jisai bijo, kad tas procentas pradės kristi. Tai reiškia, mes susidurėme pasiekus rezultatą, mes susidurėme su problema, o ne jos sprendimu. Tai šitoje situacijoje sprendimo priėmimas pasikeičia, tai reiškia, mes pradedame bijoti atlikti, tai reiškia, pasiekus rezultatą mums nesidaro lengviau. Lengviau darosi tada, kada mes žinome, kaip mes jį pasiekėm. Tai aš pabandysiu pašnekėti, kokiu būdu mes ypač tai svarbu padaryti ir prieš sezoną, susidėlioti, kaip aš sugebu pasiekti tą rezultatą. Vienas geras iš tų pavyzdžių yra baudų metimai. Nes treniruotės mes galime matyti krepšininkus, kurie sumeta 10-20 iš eilės, tačiau varžybų metu mes prametam. Niekas nepasikeičia, tai reiškia, mes metam iš tos pačios vietos, mūsų metimas, raumenų atmintis mes ją turime, bet kažkas mums maišo. Tai aš visą laiką klausiu krepšininkų, kas yra svarbu, kuomet mes metame lemiamą baudą, į mūsų galvą ateina labai daug minčių, mes nesugebėme, atrodo, su joms susidoroti, mes pradedame jaudintis, koks yra pagrindinis mūsų tikslas. Ir visi vienbalsiai atsako, tai įmesti yra pagrindinis tikslas, nes jeigu įmesi, man palengvės. Tai čia prisiminkime tą žaidimą, kurį ką tik rodžiau. Aš įmetęs, atrodo, išsprendžiu savo problemą. Bet tada visi sako, tu matosi, kad turi, nežinau, šito žodžio neminėsiu, bet dažnai yra toksai parodimas, ką tu turi, jeigu tu sugebi lemiamą metu įmesti kažkokį metimą ir panašiai. Tai va šitoje situacijoje, lyg ir aš išsprendžiau problemą, bet aš žinau, kad aš tuo metu labai jaudinausi, vėl aš atsistoju mesti baudų ir sako, jis praeitą kartą įmetė, mes žinom, kad jis savimi pasitikė, o aš viduje suprantu, kad to nėra, to pasitikėjimo nėra. Tai šitoje situacijoje su krepšininkais dirbant, mums reikia suprasti, kad mums reikia ieškoti, kas padeda atlikti metimą lygiai taip pat, kaip tu atlieki treniruotės metu. Tai mūsų tikslas yra šiuo atveju neįmesti, bet padėti dirbti su savim, kad mes suprastume, kaip aš atlieku tą metimą, kad sugebėčiau atlikti visą laiką taip pat. Tai reiškia, jeigu aš jį atliksiu visą laiką taip pat, suprasiu, kokios mintis man ateina, kas man padidina jaudulį, surasim, kas man sumažina jaudulį, šitoje situacijoje aš jį greičiausiai atliksiu taip pat. Tačiau jeigu aš įmečiau, tai nereiškia, kad aš sprendžiau problemą, su kuriuo tuo metu susidūriau, su būtent ta krizinė, su tuo būtent sudėtingiausiu momentu galbūt savo gyvenime, kuomet aš mečiau lemiamą baudą. Tai jeigu aš įmečiau, aš išvengiau. Ir tai mes galime matyti su kuriais krepšininkais, kurie meta visą laiką taip pat baudų metimus, bet staiga paima ir jie stengiasi pabėgti nuo situacijos, pabėgti nuo tų minčių ir daro tą metimą kuo greičiau stengiasi atlikti. Tai jie bėga nuo tų minčių, su kuriomis jis susiduria, bet jis neišsprendžia esminės problemos. Tai dabar pabandysiu paaiškinti, ką mes būtent darome su sportininkais, kad būtent padėti tą pagrindą, ne tik su baudų metimais, bet būtent su viskuo. Nes klubai dažniausiai perka sportininkus ir jau jie sako, kad mes jau suprantam, ką jis moka ir tai yra konstanta, o jau tai, ką jie darys daugiau, tai yra ekstra ir mes pamirštam, kad ir pačiam sportininkui, kad konstanta, mes reikia žinoti, kaip mes ją padarom, mes turim žinoti, kaip mes tai atliekam. Ir šitoje situacijoje geras pavyzdys buvo iš olimpinių žaidynių, dėl laiko stygių mes prisimsime tik tai Naomi Osakos pavyzdį, kuomet jis sakė, visa patirtis, kurią aš sukaupiau, mane pasivijo. Tai čia prisimintume tą patį žaidimą 120, rezultatai, kuriuos mes pasiekėme, mus pasivijo, jeigu mes nežinome, kaip aš tą padariau. Tai reiškia, jeigu aš įmečiau baudas kelias iš eilės lemiamų metu, bet aš toliau vis pradedu labiau jaudintis, tai aš nesprendžiu pagrindinės problemos. Ir yra didelė tikimybė, kad mane tai kažkada pasivis ir nuo to laiko man darysis tik tai sunkiau. Tai va čia yra tas dalykas, kad mes bandome panaudoti tą patirtį. Ir kai mes sakome, mes kaupiame patirtį, dažnai sportininkai jos nekaupia, o tik tai bando pasiekti tą rezultatą. Tai ką mes darome, ir tas stuburo formavimas yra susidėjimas iš dviejų pagrindinių dalykų, tai yra trupinių rankėjimo ir savo įgūdžių gryninimo. Trupinių rankėjimas yra turbūt geriausiai žinomas tai, kad mes ieškome, kuomet buvo tam tikros varžybos, kas buvo mano mintyse, ką aš dariau, ką aš veikiau, apie ką aš galvojau, o ką aš galėjau kontroliuoti ir pažiūrėti, ką mes galime pritaikyti. Tai kaip pavyzdys galėtų būti, yra dažnai sportininkai sako, aha, aš, ir tai yra vienas iš dažniausių metodų, kurių naudoju, kai aš susinervuodavau, aš pradėdavau atkreipti dėmesį į savo kvėpavimą ir tas dėmesio atkreipimas į kvėpavimą sumažina mano jaudulį. Tai šitoje situacijoje mes pradedame ieškoti, ką aš seniau darydavau, kas man padėdavo. Ir tokiu būdu mes žinome, kad net ir atėjus sunkumams, aha, yra vienas dalykas, mes pradedame ieškoti žymiai daugiau jų, kad galėtume jį panaudoti. Tai reiškia, toksai iš savo senų atsiminimų mes bandome atgaminti, ką mes galėsime panaudoti ateityje. Taip pat gali būti ir ieškome, kas mums labai trukdo. Kaip pavyzdys, jeigu aš prieš startą įkeliu kažką į socialinius tinklus, kad mes šiandien laimėsim, būtinai nugalėsiu, aš būsiu pats geriausias, ir po to sakė, aš dėl to savo pasakymo pradedu jausis vis blogiau. Tai reiškia, mums reikia spręsti problemą, iš kur ateina visas tas dalykas ir kaip mes galime tą pakeisti. Lygiai taip pat savo įgūdžių gryninimas, mes pradedam ieškoti su sportininkais, koks jūsų įgūdis, kurį jūs turite paprastame gyvenime, mes galime jį panaudoti sporte. Ir dažnai būna toks dalykas, kad sako, jeigu aš važiuoju automobiliu ir atsiduriu kamštyje, aš visiškai nesnervuoju, todėl kad aš galiu savo skirti laiko savo. Tad mes pradedame ieškoti, kaip mes galime panaudoti tą įgūdį sporte. Tai reiškia, tai, ką aš kalbu dabar, labai svarbu yra daryti prieš sezoną, kad susiformuoti, kad mes visą laiką turime pagrindą, aš žinau kaip pavyzdžiui, nusiraminti, aš žinau kaip išnaudoti tam tikrą laiką. Tai reiškia, mūsų darbas šitoje situacijoje, kas dažnai maišoma su psichologu, kuomet ir sako, mes nesakome niekada sportininkui nesnervuoti, mes niekada nesakome sportininkui nekreip dėmesio. Čia yra tas pats, kas sakyti žmogui, kuris nori į tualetą, tu nenori į tualetą. Mes jam neduodame jokio sprendimo, mes jam duodame, konstatuojame faktą. Tai va čia mes pradame ieškoti, ką mes galime daryti. Ir vienas geriausių pavyzdžių buvo iš olimpinių žaidynių, kuomet sportininkas, norėdamas pakeisti kažkokį savo galbūt mąstymą apie tai, kaip jam seksis sporto šakoje, jisai mezgė. Ne dėl to, kad jisai buvo skolingas kelis megztinius po olimpinių žaidynių, bet todėl, kad tai jam padėdavo nusiraminti. Beje, šitas sportininkas ir iškovojo aukso medalį šuolyje nuo tramplyno. Tai yra vienas iš būdų, bet aišku, būtų labai keista matyti sportininką, kuris prieš išbėgant į aikštę pradeda megzti ir kol sėdi ant suoliuko. Bet yra kiti būdai, būtent, kurie padeda mums nusiraminti ir mes tai ieškome su jais. Kitas labai dalykas yra svarbus, tai yra planas. Tai reiškia, mes pradedame planuotis arba kitaip, kuomet krepšinė dažnai girdime rutina. Tai reiškia, kuomet mes metame baudos metimus, lygiai taip pat, kuomet mes bandome daryti savo pasiruošimą. Ir plano arba rutinos problema yra tada, kad nuomet jinai tampa per daug automatinė. Kaip pavyzdys, jeigu mes išeiname iš namų ir bandome rakinti duris, kas atsitinka, mes, kadangi darome tai labai automatiškai, mes netikėm dėmesio, kad mes užrakiname duris, išeinam iš namų, kas atsitinka, užrakinau duris ar neužrakinau. Mes suteikiam savo streso lygį ten, kur jo net galėjo ir nebūti, todėl kad mes nekreipiam dėmesio, kaip mes atliekame savo planą arba savo rutiną. Tai šitoje situacijoje, kuomet mes susidėliojame planus, labai aiškiai pradedame uždėti akcentus, kur mes turime kreipti dėmesį. Nes būtent mūsų minčių tas pabėgimas ir sukelia mums papildomas būtent problemas. Tai va šitoje situacijoje mes pradedam planus ne tik, kad susidaro, mes pradedame ieškoti, kaip mes galime juos įvykdyti. Geriausias plano pavyzdys yra Rafaelis Nadalis. Tie, kas domisi tenisu, žino, koks yra jo pasiruošimas prieš pradedant servui ir kaip jis kreipia dėmesį, kaip jis pasistato buteliukus, kaip jis ateina iki servo, ką jisai daro, na ir būtent tas trumpikų ištraukimas, nusišluostimas ir būtent atlikimas. Lygiai taip pat krepšinėje, jeigu mes paimtume, vienas iš tokių ikoniškiausių buvo baudų metimų, kaip Jasono Kido, kuomet jis siųsdavo bučinį prieš metant baudos metimą. Labai svarbu šitoje situacijoje, kuomet mes dirbame su sportininkais, jiems pasakyti, kad kuomet suprantame, kuomet tai tampa automatizmu ir jūsų mintys ateina žymiai daug kitų galvojimų, kas yra nesusiję būtent su to, ko jūs atliekat, tuomet ir gali prasidėti įkyrios mintis, mes galime pradėti permąstyti ir dėl to netlikti tai, ką mes galėjome atlikti. Ir dažnai situacijoje sako, bet aš padariau tą, kas buvo susitarta, bet aš padariau to, kas buvo planas. Taip, bet greičiausiai tu padarai tai automatiškai ir tavo mintyse buvo visiškai kas kita. Ir tai reiškia, psichomotorika šitoje situacijoje jau neveikia. Mes dažnai netgi su sportininkais čia yra ilgesniam laiko tarpu naudojame tokius kaip imagerius, tai yra vaizdinių kūrimo treniruotės, kuomet mes bandome sujungti psichomotoriką, tai reiškia tai, ką mes įsivaizduojame su raumenų įsitempimu. Bet šitoje situacijoje labai svarbu yra tai, kad mes turime daryti tai mechaniškai. Nes jeigu mes pradėsim daryti kaip automatiškai, mes turėsime tokią pačią problemą, kaip rakinant duris. Tai reiškia, mes labai gerai jas mokam užrakinti, bet mes sukuriam savo problemą iš nieko. Ir paskutinis dalykas, vienas iš ko mes darome, tai yra if-then situacijos. Tai naudojame, čia aš jums patikiu lietuvių kalbą, kokį mes planą, pavyzdžiui, naudojame ir kodėl jis yra reikalingas. Todėl, kad smegenys yra toks įdomus dalykas, kad jeigu jos atlieka veiksmą, jos visą laiką turi gauti pastiprinimą. Na ir geriausias pavyzdys turbūt yra alkoholio vartojimas, kuomet žmogus vartoja alkoholį, sako, man labai gerai ir mes matome tą judėjimą į dešinę, paremtą emocijomis, man smagu, galbūt man linksma, tai aš darau veiksmą ir iš karto aš gaunu paskatinimą. Tuo tarpu mano žala, tai yra pagirios ar dar kažkas, ateina kitą rytą ir žmogus sako, aš daugiau to niekada gyvenime nedarysiu, bet praeina kažkuris laikas ir jisai vėl tą daro. Kodėl? Todėl, kad jam smegenys yra susijungusios, kad yra žingsnis po žingsnio, kuomet buvo pastiprinimas. Tai šitoje situacijoje mes darome tokia kaip špargalkė, nelabai gražiai išsireikšti, paruoštukė lietuviškai turėtume sakyti, kuomet mes su sportininkais pradedame ieškoti, koks mano veiksmas, susiduriant su tuo pačiu, pavyzdžiui, baudos metimu, aš pradedu jaudintis, bet koks yra mano pagrindinis tikslas šitoje situacijoje, tai reiškia surasti, kas padeda, kaip pavyzdys, neįmesti, ne kuo greičiau išmesti, bet kas padeda su atėjusiam tom įkyriom mintim sumažinti tas įkyrias mintis ir atlikti metimą šiuo atveju, tai kaip aš atlieku jį visada. Tuomet mes iš tikrųjų pastebim, kad mes susiduriam su trumpalaikėmis problemomis. Tai reiškia, aš vis tiek jaučiu jaudulį, bet aš pradedu ieškoti, kas man padeda tose situacijose jį įveikti. Tai reiškia, tai mes gauname kažkokią ilgalaikę naudą ateityje. Ir dėl to mes rašome viršų ten vertybės. Tie, kurie sportininkai nekalba lietuviškai, tai be abejo mes duodame ne lietuvių kalbą šitą metodą, tai yra anglų kalba. Nesistengėme išversti į kiekvieno, šiaip reikėtų, bet mes, vertimas nebūtų visą laiką taisyklingas, jeigu išversti būtent į kiekvieno sportininko kalbą, su kuria jis kalba. Tai reiškia, mes dažniausiai pastebime vertybės ir jeigu tas pats grįžtant prie baudų metimų, mano tikslas yra pabėgti nuo problemos. Jeigu aš bandau išmesti kuo greičiau baudą ir mano tikslas yra tik tai įmesti ir neišspręsti, su kuria problema aš susiduriu, kas atsitinka, mano tikslas yra pabėgti ir šitoje situacijoje laimėti savo laiko. Nors iš tikrųjų mano tikslas yra išmokti mesti tai taisyklingai. Ir po to visą, ką mes darome, tai naudojame tikrinimą. Tai realiai tai, ką aš paminėjau, tai yra beveik visas tas pats, ką tik prieš mums pradedant minėjo Donatas. Tai reiškia, kad mums visą laiką reikia ieškoti, ką mes galime panaudoti, kaip mes galime panaudoti. Mes tada kūrėme planus, tikriname tam tikrom situacijom, kaip pavyzdžius šitoj, kai buvo if-then, tai yra labai kritinėse situacijose, ką mes naudojame. Tai reiškia, suprantant, kad mūsų smegenys kartais darys mums nenaudą, o žalą, todėl, kad jos bando ieškoti kuo greičiau gaunamos naudos. Tai yra natūralu, kad jeigu mes gauname paskatimą, lygiai taip pat kaip šunis dresiruoja, jeigu mes pasakome sėdėti, mes jam turime duoti kuo greičiau skanuką, tam, kad susiformuotų būtent smegenyse tas susijungimas. Tai lygiai taip pat, jeigu mes norime kuo greičiau išsimesti baudą, mes norime kuo greičiau išmesti, pabėgti nuo tos nemalonios situacijos. Vietoj to, kad mes pradėtume ieškoti, kas padeda man išbūti to nemalonioje situacijoje, tam, kad mokėčiau kitą kartą atlikti tą baudą žymiai, kuo įmanoma taisyklingiau tai, kaip aš ją atlieku. Ir be abejo, mes visą laiką tikrinam. Ir tas tikrinimas plano visą laiką keičiasi. Kaip ir sakiau, vieną kartą atrodo, kad mes atlikome planą, bet iš tikrųjų mes galime jo neatlikti. Tai reiškia, kaip ir sakiau, mintis kažkur nuėjo į kitą vietą. Ir iš išorės matome, kad atliko, bet viduje mes žinome, kad tai nebuvo atlikta. Tai mes pradedame ieškoti, tikrinti ir žiūrėti, kaip mes galime padėti sportininkams. Tai visos šitos dalys geriausia, kad būtų padaryta prieš sezoną, tam, kad mes galėtume ant šitos, kaip ir minėjau, konstantos, tai, ką mes jau mokome, dėlioti ekstra, ko prašo treneriai. Nes dažnu atveju būna, kad treneriai jau sako, tu tai moki ir tai yra ekstra, ko iš tavęs noriu. Ir sportininkai, kaip ir su tuo kauliukų metimu, pamiršta, ką jie moka, jiem nebeišeina ekstra ir šitoje situacijoje mes turime duobę, į kurią krenta sportininkas. Dėl labai paprastos priežasties, nes jisai nebežino, kaip atgal pasistatyti būtent tą stuburą, nuo ko jisai pradėjo. Tai tiek trumpai. Ačiū už dėmesį.
Andriau, žinau, kad turim tave paleisti bėgį į treniruotę, bet labai trumpai vienas greitas klausimas. Antanas Reika sakė, kad apdovanojimai, konkrečiai MVP statulėlė arba pagerbimai prieš rungtynes krepšininkui paveikė jį neigiamai. Kiek iš tikrųjų žaidėjai galvoja apie tos apdovanojimus, kurios gauna prieš rungtynes, arba kiek tai išmuša juos iš to psichologinio fokuso svarbiausiam vakaro įvykiui, tai yra rungtynėms ar geram pasirodymui?
Labai geras pastebėjimas, būtent, nes tai yra kažkoks simbolis, galėtų būti ir tas MVP, aš kaip ir minėjau, tas pats užlipimas, netgi ant to 120 skaičiaus, tai paveikia mus didžiąją dalimi neigiamai. Tai vat kai kurie sportininkai yra pasiruošę nuo to atsiriboti, kiti nėra pasiruošę, nes lygiai taip pat ne tik tai tas įteikimas, kuris yra kaip simbolis, kad tu buvai galbūt geriausias ir man reikia tą pakartoti, yra vienas dalykas, bet yra ir antras dalykas, kuris yra labai svarbus, tai reiškia išmuša tavo rutiną, kurią tu esi pasirašęs ir pasidėjęs. Tai yra labai didelis dalykas, kai aš ir kalbėjau, būtent to stuburo formavimo, kad aš sugebėčiau nuo to atsiriboti. Ne tik MVP, būtent tų statulėlių įteikimai, bet aš kaip ir minėjau, tas baudų metimo arba tritaškių metimo procentas, kuomet sakoma ir visą laiką sako, šitas žaidėjas neprametė jau galbūt 30 baudų metimų iš eilės. Ir tada tai lieka mūsų galvoje, kad aš nepramečiau 30 baudų metimų iš eilės. Kas bus, jeigu aš pramesiu? Tai aš pradedu galvoti ne apie savo rutimą, kaip aš atlieku, bet aš pradedu galvoti, kad aš esu tas, kuris neprametė 30 galbūt baudų metimų iš eilės. Tai nežinau, jeigu pasiėmus taip netgi olimpinėse, kuomet aš dirbau su olimpinė rinktinė, yra naudojama labai daug tų negražių, tos būtent negražios sporto psichologijos pusės, kuomet tu gali labai lengvai išmušti sportininką iš vėžių, panaudojęs tam tikrus dalykus. Tai tas vienas iš MVP įtikimų tai yra kaip ir gražus pagirbimas, bet to pačiu tau labai lengva yra išmušti sportininką, kuris galbūt nėra pasiruošęs tą padaryti.
Tai Andriau, dabar labai gerai supratau, kodėl Almantas Kiveris dažnai drausmindavo žurnalistus, kurie per tokias ilgas serijas, kaip tarkim Artūro Milaknio baudų metimai, drausmindavo žurnalistus ir prašydavo tik tais nerašyti apie tai, nes dažniausiai bent jau jo įsitikinimo, tai būtinai kitas baudas jis prames, jeigu tam bus uždėtas akcentas.
Jo, bet tai čia, žinot, kaip ir sako, prikarksėti. Tai nėra prikarksėjimo šitoje situacijoje, tai yra klausimas, kaip pats sportininkas gali su to susidoroti. Nes aš kaip ir minėjau, jeigu aš atlieku tą, kaip Jasonas Kidas atlieka bučinio siuntimą, ten kaip ir sakė, savo vaikams, savo žmonai, po to, aišku, tas bučinys nepadėjo šitoje situacijoje, bent jau su baudom padėjo, bet su kita pusė nepadėjo. Bet šitoje situacijoje reikėtų suprasti tai, kad jo mintyse pradeda daryti ne kaip aš atlikinėjau tą veiksmą, bet kas bus, jeigu pramesiu. Tai reiškia, aš jau atlieku tą veiksmą visiškai kitaip.
Tai kągi, Andrius Lechovičius, Kauno Žalgirio komandos sporto psichologas, labai ačiū Jums už pranešimą ir geros treniruotės.
Ačiū, viso gero.
Now we're heading in the English part of our conference, and today I will introduce you to one of the most anticipated parts of the LKL conference, which is the discussion about the crisis management in sports organization. So first of all, let me introduce our guests first. Today we will have the Managing Director of EuroLeague Players Association, Boštjan Nachbar, the General Manager of Maccabi Tel Aviv, Nikola Vucic, and the Sports Director of Cedevita Olimpija Ljubljana, Sani Bečirovic. Gentlemen, hello everyone.
Hi.
Hello, Donatas.
Hi. Hi, Donatas.
Good to have you here. And for the warm-up, I have a quick question because probably you all watched the Game 5 yesterday. And I have a question. After all these post-retirement years working in the office, would you rather deal with on-court crisis, playing Game 5 and being down by 10, or you already feel pretty confident, dealing with this crisis in the office?
Depends. If you win the game, then of course on the court. If you lose, then this is nothing. Lose the game, the 5 is the biggest crisis.
I would go on the court. My answer would be on the court, most definitely.
Yeah, I agree with Sani. I think that the pressure that you feel as a player on the court is a big pressure, but it's at the end of the day an enjoyable pressure. I think everything that we're dealing now in sports business is a different type of pressure, and it's not as fun as playing. Basketball is still basketball, and shooting the ball at the rim, it's still special, I think.
Yeah, one of the United States leading experts in crisis management and crisis communications, Steve Fink, established a generally accepted 4-stage crisis model that can be applied to all situations. And we'll try to go through all these 4 stages together during this conversation. And the first initial stage of any crisis is the preliminary stage, preliminary crisis stage, which combines all warning signs of an emerging crisis in the early stage. So for our preparation of explaining how to deal with crisis, let's identify what the crisis to you really is, because for some, if, for example, Barcelona was losing the Game 5, maybe that was a big crisis for that organization, because Barcelona
the organization in general is going through tough times, considering the football team. So, handling the basketball section, having a failure would be a very difficult situation. And I also personally believe that if the invasion in Piraeus, the fans' invasion in Piraeus, went worse, and if somebody got hurt, probably we wouldn't have Bojan Nahbar over there. So, a lot of people might understand and identify what the crisis is for them and what is not the actual crisis. So could you give us an examples what the real crisis for you, besides the obvious ones, of course, COVID or war? That's a no-brainer, but maybe there are some, let's say, crises suggested by the outside, but not the real crisis inside the organization.
I think Nicola should go first. He's the most experienced guy.
Yes, I have the most crisis. So, of course, according to the expectations of the club, and we are talking now mostly crisis that we have every year. Most of the clubs have every year. That's the crisis, result crisis. What I identified 10 years in my job, basically there is two big crises during the season. Every season, it's unbelievable, but every season, it's somewhere end of November, between 15th of November until 15th of December is the one crisis. And if you see in Europe, most of the coaches get fired in this period of time. And then there is a second crisis somewhere there around 1st of, usually after the cup. If the team lose the cup, then he has like 2-3 weeks of the big crisis and drop down. Of course, there is also clubs that, like Maccabi, that they are national club. Let's say that everybody follow us, everybody has opinion about it, everybody wants to win, and the club has a history of winning. We are a club with 108 or 109 titles. Everything that here is about title. The second place is not the place. And the words like this, so something that is, with high expectations, of course, is coming lots of swings in mood, and crises are something that is very, very common in organizations like this. Dealing with crisis, look, it's coming also experience in this. When you have lots of crises, you have lots of experience. And there is lots of things in common, but most what we find out the best cure for any crisis is winning the games. You go out of this crisis in sport only by winning the games. And I can give you an example. In my situation this year, we changed the coach. We put a coach in place that never coached before on full season, and media expectations. They were very, what are you doing? How is this managing in these situations? What kind of management of crisis is this? And but it was created one very bad atmosphere for a period of time, but then we beat Milan at home, and then we beat Real at home, and after that, change of energy was unbelievable. We won 7-8 games in a row in EuroLeague, and the crisis was finished. And now we are looking for next one. This is the mainly.
For us, the same.
Hassan, you want to go ahead?
I'll jump in because we had the same crisis this year, like Nicola said before. It's really strange or funny that always after the national team break, there is usually the crisis, or after cup, as Nicola mentioned before. And for us, was this year November was really bad. We lost 3 games in a row, which for us was a big shock. Having difficulties, all the season long, or even in the start of the season when we were winning, we were not playing as we expected or good. And then it hit us in November. Yeah, we lost 3 games pretty bad against Budućnost by 30 and against Mega in Belgrade by 30. And this was the first time dealing with the crisis, because for us the past 2 years since I am sports director in the club. Basically, the season were always going pretty well, and we were more or less achieving our goals. This year, no, and like Nicola said, with in tough times, you also see reaction of the people. You also see, how you want to deal with certain situation. And this year we were mentally strong and prepared to take our time, to not make quick decisions, because also here in Ljubljana, the people are expecting us to win every game. They still have in mind, let's say, old glory days of Olympia, and everybody was already expecting us to change half of the team, to change the coach, to, in generally do as fan would do, so not think with the head, but think with the heart. In our case, it showed that if you have patience and if you have clear idea of what you want to achieve, you can deal with the crisis and get out of the crisis stronger, and this is what we did. We changed some players. We didn't decide to change the coach because in our mind, with some, let's say, different decisions during the game, or even one ref call could change, it could make the difference. So that's why we said, I think that the coach is doing a great job. We will continue believing in our coach. Let's make some changes in the roster, first. And at the end, it worked out pretty well for us, because, we managed to come now to the semifinals of the Adriatic League, which was the first goal for us, and to come in the quarterfinals of the Euro Cup with, let's say, a little bit of luck, or if pull and shot would go in split second earlier, then maybe we would be, in the semifinal or even in the final. But this is basketball and this is sports. And nevertheless, once again, we really took our time with the decisions, who we want to change, who we want to bring, and I think this is the most important. Never make quick decisions, no matter how big the pressure is. From the fans, from the media, from the sponsors at the end, because also they are the the part that many times in some situations they want to make quick decisions, because in business maybe you can do certain moves earlier than in sports. And once again, we are extremely happy that things worked out for us this year as they did.
Sunny mentioned very good point, because usually that's the coach who gets hurt of this sports crisis during the season. And you all played on a highest level, and you guys know better than anybody of us when there's that line when you can keep going through this crisis with the coach, and where's that line where this change is, you cannot avoid this change. So from your experience, how would you explain, when it's the time to change the coach, or when the coach should deserve trust, although he might suffer very big pressure from the outside, or even you in this position taking decisions to fire the coach or to keep him, you might get all this pressure, not only from the fans, but maybe from the ownership, which doesn't feel the inside of the team that well, like you guys.
What, again me? Again me?
Or
huh?
go I, or I go.
I fired the most coaches. You want to
Yeah. So let me go, because I didn't. I mean, the first question you have to ask yourself is, are the players still believing in the coach? Does he has their, how to say, not questionable authority, So if the players are still on the same page with the coach, and as in our case, we had really 2 bad games. We had lost at home with Ulm with a really bad last call, which could go either way. So the game plan was working for us, and the thing was, we really then presented ourselves 2 times bad on the court. But in my mind, the players still believed in the coach. There was still this connection that made us believe that, okay, we are doing the right thing by giving the coach not a chance, but to continue, you know, believing in him and following the idea and the path that we set in the beginning of the season. Secondly, you know, I think that in general, we lost patience, you know, we lost patience not only with players, but also with coaches, you know, and this is also something that needs to be put out there, because, you know, it can happen that a good coach also has a bad month, you know, and that doesn't mean that he's a bad coach, you know, it's just circumstances that bring to some results. And this also has to be taken into consideration when you make a decision either to go on with the coach or fire him, you know. And once you have all these answers, then I think it's much easier to make a final decision either to stick with the same coach and, you know, give him more and more chances, or change the coach and go different way.
Yeah, so I would say that decision to make the coach, it's very tough, and you know, unfortunately, I'm in a position that you know, we had to change. You know, when you are 10 years in this business, I think, you know, I changed at least 10 coaches. But it's something that is really last resource. You know, at least in my case, we were always fighting for the coach until the last moment, because you know, the first reason why you brought this coach is something that you really, at least in our case, is that you went deeply in the analytics and to understand what is good and bad things, and what he can bring you in the end. Of course, sometimes you cannot bring the perfect players for this coach. Maybe he's a more defensively minded, and you bring more offensive players, or opposite. So there is understanding that there is a not perfect maybe matchup for this coach, and this always taking time. You're trying to adjust coach to these players until they fit each other. So the time is something that you always want to buy for the coach and for the players and the team to set up. But sometimes it's happened at that moment that you know exactly that after that there is no back. It's some kind of collapse of energy inside the team, that you enter the locker room and then you see the empty coach is talking, and you see the players are looking in the floor and in the wall, and there is no reaction. Meeting after meeting, and you see that just energy of the team. It's something that you know that you cannot pull out. I mean, it's look like a squeezed orange. And in this moment, there is no. This is just prolonging. Or you change 3-4 players, and like Sunny did, and change on this way the atmosphere in the team. Or if you have you know, if you don't have possibility to do these moves because of different reasons. Let's say in Israel, for us, it's very hard to change foreigners because you cannot register the new foreigners. It's a limitation. So you see that if you do this kind of move, you cannot. Okay, you cut 3 players, but you cannot bring 3 new. And register in the local league. So what you did, okay, you cut 3 players, but then stay with a very small roster, and then you cannot play. So in our case, changing of the coach is something that is more forced to be done, because your options to do something else are very limited, and that's why in our case you see that most time we're changing coach, not the players. This is something that, of course, local hockey association are you know, don't let us to do these kind of things. But of course, they're protecting the players, and this is normal. But this is the reason why we had to make this change and change the coach. It's never easy, but it's unnecessary, because developing energy around the team through media, through fans, is something that, you know, you're coming to the game and people booing your own coach, your own players. So it's not point of the game. You have to react. Of course, again, this is something last last resort, because even this year, I give you an example that, we had 8 games in a row in the EuroLeague losses. Enormous pressure to change the coach after second game, not after 8. But we went through this, we won few games, and then of course happened the cup, and we lost the cup, and then after that was developed this kind of energy that we just had to do it.
Boštjan, anything to add regarding this topic, or we can move to the second stage, which is probably more related to what you do with ELPA?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a much different situation than Nicola and Sunny. I'm not, or our organization is not dealing with wins or losses. Fortunately or unfortunately. Personally, I miss that adrenaline, but always when I talk to Nicola and Sunny, who are both my good friends and my former teammates, they always tell me don't get involved because it's too stressful. So I don't know if they see a potential a danger of me joining the club and being a competitor, or they actually are giving me friendly advice. But that's a different discussion.
Oh, okay, come.
But no, I mean, from ELPA side, we are dealing with different kind of crises and different kind of pressures. I mean, for us, it's about, as Nicola already pointed out quickly, it's about helping players and securing players' rights and standards that clubs have to offer. So it is a different kind of environment, but it does bring its own pressures and crises, definitely. And we went through some of these things only in our first couple of years of existing. ELPA is existing only 4 seasons. This is our 4th season, and we already had to deal with the pandemic, and now with the war in Ukraine, which brought a lot of change in the world of sports in general. So we're not immune to situations where we have to, on one hand, be prepared as much as possible, but on the other, react very quickly, because players are impatient. Players expect to have everything around them working perfectly or close to perfectly, and it's our job to get as close to that perfection as possible so that players can focus only on basketball.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hear your thoughts for our second stage of crisis, which is when actually the crisis strikes. For example, season is shut down due to COVID indefinitely. War has started in Ukraine, and the team was actually on its way to the airport to go to Russia. So at the moment when crisis hits, it is said that early hours are critical and might set the tone for the duration of the crisis. But let's imagine that the crisis happened, the damage has been done, and the amount of the damage now depends on how smoothly and efficiently a crisis will be managed. So, for example, Boštjan, from your perspective, dealing with COVID or the war, what are the main steps or rules you try to follow dealing with crisis when it hits you and you have to act very fastly?
For us, because we are dealing with players from 18 different clubs, it's about obtaining as much information as quickly as possible. Connecting with players across 18 teams, it's vital. Getting as much information to see what is actually happening on the ground, not just information we hear either from EuroLeague or from media. This is all sometimes filtered information, so it's important that we get a direct info. Now, you mentioned, for example, the start of the war in Ukraine, where FC Barcelona team was already on the way to the airport when everything was blowing up, and the panic kind of started. And being on the phone directly with players while they're on the bus to the airport and while they're waiting to board the plane, and trying to calm them down that we are working on a situation to let's say stop the flight. Barcelona was about to travel to St. Petersburg. That's one of those examples. And as I said before, it's not easy because players have very high expectation always that everything is going to be arranged in a second. But I'm sure Nicola and Sunny can also confirm that it's not so easy. And it's not so easy for a club to make a decision just like that. The club has to go through certain people as well in communication with the league in order to make some big changes, like, for example, not traveling to a game, which is huge. So staying in touch, and then also, as the crisis happen, preparing next steps and how we're going to deal with the backlash that happens. We had let's say a successful situation where FC Barcelona team remained in Barcelona and didn't fly, but on the other hand, we had Unix Kazan team that was stuck in the middle of between Kazan and Milano flying to the game there, and we're also communicating with players for many hours when they were stuck in the airport south of Russia and not continuing the flight to Istanbul and then to Milano. And you learn a lot from these situations. You learn a lot about the characters of people in your organization. You learn about the characters that you are dealing with, and you also learn about how far people are willing to go in order to help each other and who you can count on. So I think every crisis reveals a lot of personalities that I think it's worth remembering for the next time the crisis hits, because it's important to know in crisis who you can count on, and unfortunately who are the people that will maybe just tell you something just to tell you something, but there's no real truth or no real backing behind it. So for us, like I said at the beginning, as a young organization, we had to learn and grow up really fast in this tough environment. But I think all these crises just made us a lot stronger.
What about you guys dealing with COVID, especially?
Look, it was of course, it was shock. I remember we had to play a game against Baskonia, and in a day was decision league stops. Like, if you remember, also at that time we were living like 100 kilometers per hour. It was crazy how we used to live fast. Everything was in motion. And then in one moment everything stopped, and we were like, "What now?" Like, suddenly life completely changed, and everything like complete stop. But I always said, like, in the crisis also force you to do some things that you never think about, and most of the times out of crisis, people getting stronger and the organization getting stronger. And this happened in this last crisis. Look, we stopped to play the league. Suddenly, what we do? We don't have the rules for this. We didn't have even a force majeure in the contracts of the players. Who were thinking about these kind of things? Suddenly appears somebody called Nachbar with some Elpa and tell you, "Hello guys, what is this?" Sorry, Boki, but I'm just saying it. What the people say, who is this fucking Nachbar now? And Elpa, suddenly there is a request from the players. There is another organization that wants to get money for the players, of course, for their members. But we don't have any kind of scale, any kind of how we calculate this crisis, how we calculate percentages of the incomes, of the losses, of everything. How are we going to pay these players? Okay, players work, players deserve to get money for amount of time that they spend, but league stopped. And this kind of situation forces also, I remember now, we didn't have communication between the clubs on the level like this. We had only official through the EuroLeague and the assemblies and this, but we didn't have never open conversation between the clubs. Suddenly, we have a groups of clubs. We start to discuss the things. Hey, guys, what we do in this situation? Start to communicate and make much higher and better bond between the teams in this crisis. Then we start to meetings with ELPA, start to find the solutions together, how to solve this kind of crisis. Then we understood also that the side of club, that ELPA is a very important organization, to have somebody that is helping us establish rules of behaving in all kinds of situations. We started with the top crisis in the world, but we also in the meantime talk and discuss the smaller things, smaller details, how to have as much as we can rules that we're going to be able to follow in any kind of crisis. So we can react, financial crisis of the clubs, or not paying the players, or force majeure. Look, we started with COVID, and then this force majeure went to the war. I'm sure now Boki is dealing with force majeure in Russia, and start to understand with the players what they can get and how they can get, and what is how are we going to manage this. And there is lots of things happened last 3 years that we never thought about this level. Listen, We had the situations that players are coming in Tel Aviv. By the rules of government, you have to do the tests on the airport. There is certain percentage of the tests that they are fake. And it's, thanks God, we happened to only one case. I think your guys from Zalgiris, the test came positive from airport. We are blocked. We don't know what to do. We tried all the best to help the team, to accommodate him and do everything. But there is things that you cannot, you cannot overrule the government, because this crisis was the government run the crisis. It's happened also that, you wake up in the morning, I get a call. My team manager called me and told me, listen, we have 3 coaches with COVID. Find the coach. So what do you mean? I know, I just like, what coach? Find a coach tonight. You have to have a coach. That's I said, okay. I called my assistant. Avi is my assistant. Was my assistant. Now he's a coach. I told him, listen, you are the coach. He told me, what are you talking about? I said, listen, coach, wake up. 3 coaches wake up with COVID. We have no choice. Players wake up with COVID. 3, 4. Then it's coming more. But you have to manage it. We're trying. We set the rules in EuroLeague that 8 players a minimum that you need to have for the team. And it was many games postponed. We had this year postponed 5 games. I think 2 because of us, 3 because of the opponent. And this is also something like we managed last 3 years. Amount of crisis enormous. Panic of the. In Israel, we had also war 2 years ago. On this, we had also the rocket attack. Players, as much as you explained it is safe, nothing, that we have the protection for the rockets, everything. It's not nice to hear explosions and they start to panic. I can understand them. They're coming from USA, they're coming from LA, and they suddenly under rocket attack. And this is the crisis that, again, different type of crisis that you need to deal with the player, with the agent, with help. But I believe that also after all this crisis, we're going to get out as a better organization, as the EuroLeague and the ELPA, and we all, I think we did a great job for the players and for the clubs to manage this crisis and to not lose clubs. As you can see, we didn't have any huge damage of the clubs, that we lost the clubs because of the financial crisis or bankrupt or something, and it was real danger in this crisis.
Yeah, exactly. What was special with COVID and these war situations, that you can find these crisis solutions in any book. So that's where I want to ask Sani, who was appointed as a sports director of Cedevita Olympia right before that first COVID season started. What do you remember how you approached the situation? What were the examples you tried to follow, dealing with the players, force majeure situation, also club possibly facing some financial problems due to empty gyms and the uncertainty over the upcoming season?
Basically when in March 2020, season stopped for us and all the competition stopped, I was fortunate enough to talk with Boki even before that, if this happens, because in the same time, my father was a coach in China, at that time, and everything started there. So basically, I was just, being up to date and trying to copy some of the things that were going on there, And for us, I think we were one of the first clubs, to really offer the players like termination of the contract, early termination of the contract, paying up to 80%, and just taking care of the players leaving the country as soon as possible, especially for Americans, because nobody in that moment knew what was, gonna happen and how each country is gonna set the rules for departuring to United States or even other countries. So in that moment, I think we reacted really well. And after, as we all know, also the other clubs did pretty much the same. And this was let's say, the first situation with COVID, What Nicola mentioned before is, I think that in the last year and a half, the amount of stress of not knowing, not being able to program something ahead is the type of stress that we never encountered before, because we had the same situation. Waking up in the morning, you have 16 missed calls and 75 messages that there is no coach. We have 3 coaches, that are with COVID, and Sunny, you need to help because I don't have an assistant, so otherwise I would put like Nicola, the assistant. You need to be on the practice, the plays, talk to the players because we need to play the game. Then we were fortunate enough that also the other team, Borac from Čačak, they had cases, so that game was not played. Otherwise we would have to play the game, and I would have to assist on the bench, even though that's not my job. And what I wanted to say is I think that with COVID, we managed to be way more resourceful and work outside the box. So when something happens, then you find a solution. So our imagination and just working day by day, because you never know who's gonna go down, who's gonna be positive, what the government will impose with the new rules, helped us to be really more flexible and just work day per day or week by week. And once again, I also agree that after this crisis, all of the organizations are on a much, much higher level, and the communication between the clubs, it's really, really, in my mind right now, perfect, because you can get information, because we are trying to help each other, how you solve this case, what's going on there. And this is something that really, at the end, I think, no matter how hard it was and how difficult this past year and a half or 2 was for all of us, at the end, we're going to be much better off.
So let's say, to conclude this package of rules or moves, how to deal with the start of the crisis, it would be like getting the information, analyzing it, reacting, and as Sana emphasized, let's say, continuing the communication with others. What else should be added to this package? What we are missing?
I would add to learn from this. We can't go through any crisis without seeing what we actually learned and outline the things that were either changed or adjusted, because you never know when something, maybe not the same, but something similar could happen, and you can draw from the conclusions that you learned in the past. I think it's very important to add that to the list, and that's at least what I'm trying to do and we are trying to do. Especially I think as an organization that is growing, you need to learn from the things you did, whether they're mistakes, whether they're good things, or whether they're things that have to do with managing the crisis. I think it's all a learning process. I think you never stop learning, and I believe that's the approach.
Okay, so the third stage, according to the expert of crisis management and communications, Stephen Fink, the third stage is the chronic crisis stage, which is actually all about regrouping and recovering after the crisis. For example, you survived this first COVID wave, the season is stopped, you kind of found some agreements with players, or for example, the war has started and Russian teams were excluded from the EuroLeague. But then there comes the moment when, okay, what's next? And there's the big uncertainty about the future. What's now? Or what kind of season we will have the next year? So talking about this third stage, how to keep your organization stable in the period of that uncertainty when you have no clue, what will happen and when things will get to normal?
I think this depends also of the structures of organization. Is this a private club, or it's a club run by the the foundation, or there is no real owner? Because I believe also in situations like where is the ownership existing for the long period of time, like let's say in Maccabi, then immediately after that, of course, first thing is to preserve the club. To be sure that there is no jeopardy for the future of the club. That's mean that immediately all the managers of the club have to do do inside their own departments the structure of the expenses, structure of the needs, start trying to predict the things what they will be in the future. But mainly, most important thing is to preserve the club. All the reaction that we did in Maccabi, they were first to ensure that existing of the club is not in jeopardy. For us, in our case, is very important, and that we have a reputation of the club that always we never late in the history of the club to payment to the players, to the coaches, and to ensure that these kind of things that workers will be take care of, that we're going to be able to, and of course, then it's starting predictions. What if we going to play only Israel League and not Euro League? What we're going to do in this case? So we're trying to make the scenarios for this kind of situation. Then, okay, if we go to play Euro League and no fans, well, how much is going to hit us this in the ticketing side? In this case, of course, we cannot fulfill all the contracts of the players. Let's talk to ELPA. So we had agreement with ELPA in different situations, how much is reduction for each game without fans, and how to protect ourselves in this matter. So mainly this moment, you're trying to make predictions and to make the plan according to situation that appeared. You're trying to be in the front of the crisis, because once already you get surprised, you get suddenly boom that nobody was thinking about. But then in that moment you are trying to predict new crisis, new situation that will happen. What if? Because you are already hurt, you are already get a warning, and then you're trying to be. I remember that we did things that maybe we didn't use 10% of them, but we were in advance. What if? What if the question is that was following, for this, for long period of time? What if happened this? What if happened that? And we try to bring the crisis management plan in case of what if. And I think this was a very important part, because we predict many things. We were in the front of the many things that we were expecting that will be that will happen because of this crisis, and help us to manage the situation good.
Same. I mean, we did basically the same. We prepare our crisis, management program, A, B, C, D, what if, like Nicola said. But most important thing for us was the same, preservation of the project, that the project continues going, and that it's not jeopardized. For us also, being let's say new established club, by merger that happened in 2019, the most important thing was to move forward. Whatever happens, if this means decreasing the budget by 50%, okay, so be it. But we must move forward, and we must be successful in that, with lower capacities on every segment of the club. And this is what we did. Same as Nicola for our management or ownership, let's say. Even though we are not owned by one person, we have many sponsors. The most important thing was to keep all the jobs, so nobody got fired. There was no letting off. Even in this way, we showed not only to the workers but also to the city of Ljubljana and everybody that are supporting the team, that we are thinking about everybody in this situation. And this is also one thing that at the end brought us a lot of positive things, because people realized, if there was any doubt before the merger and after the merger happened, that this project will not go on, in a situation like this. We showed that the people that are inside the club are, serious people that understand all the aspects, not only of the sport, but also of life. And in that case, they showed greatness. So now the people recognize this, and the fans are, let's say, back and supporting the team more than before.
I was just thinking, listening to Nicola and Sunny, you know, one of the things that I'm realizing more and more as the time goes on with ELPA is that, you know, ELPA is mostly, if not totally, all about crisis management when it comes to players. You know, I mean, my phone does not ring when everything's okay. You know, my phone is completely silent, and there's days where I don't have to pick up a call from a player when I know that things are functioning. When my phone starts ringing and I start receiving messages, and I know that there's either individual, a team-wide, or in case of COVID, a league-wide problem where it was just exploding, you know, everywhere. So, you know, we early on when we started with the Player Association, we established protocols on what to do in many different cases. Whether there's players' injuries, you know, there's a protocol for that, for the second medical opinion. Whether there is a late payment situation where there is a fine of a player that we think is unjustified, and so on, or a team-wide issues. But on the other hand, you know, as both Nicola and Sunny said, you know, in case of COVID, for example, this was an unexpected situation that hit us, and there was no real protocol on how to approach that. We all learned on the fly, and you know, that's why I think we all got out of it better. And as I said, you know, in my prior answer, you know, trying to learn from it and establishing protocol for the future, I think it's important. But you never know when the next crisis is going to hit and what it's going to bring. So you can be as prepared as you can, but there's always a window for something unexpected that will keep you blindsided, and then you're going to have to act on the fly.
Yeah, and talking about the future, we kind of adjusted to living with COVID or next to COVID, but this war thing is new, is very serious, and it's kind of unpredictable. And war put many players in tough situations. For some of them, it was hard to leave the clubs in the beginning. Some of them had to go back to Russia to finish the season. Some of them still get some threats from the clubs. For example, we just recently had this Joel Bolomboy situation with CSKA Moscow. So, Boshan, this question is basically for you. You know, how tough it was in the beginning dealing with this crisis, and what stage you're currently right now, and how do you try to prepare yourself for the upcoming summer where players will try to get out of these Russian contracts?
Well, at the beginning was mostly about helping players feel safe. You know, when the war started, there were so many unknowns, you know, on what this actually means on the European, on the world scale, and especially having a lot of foreign players in Russia and you know, high level players, and you know, it was about, you know, trying to see how they actually feel where they are, and what they want to do. So for majority of players, it was about leaving immediately and then seeing what the situation is going to be. You know, from our side, we did not want to, especially not in the early stages, interfere in whether the player should stay, whether the player should go, whether the player should terminate the contract, whether not. You know, we had to wait a little bit to see what actually the situation is going to bring. That's why it was the most important for the players to feel safe. So in some cases, or in most cases, I would say the players did not have any kind of difficulty with leaving and finding flights. There were some players that hesitated a little bit, so it became a little bit more difficult. So talking to them, and either talking to their agents and trying to find ways of how the players could leave Russia and stay home was a part of it. And then, of course, the next step was the contract situations. And as the situation became what it became, you know, some players decided that they feel safe enough to go back. There's players in Zenit, in CSKA, and in Unis Kazan that returned and continue to play their season. But on the other hand, there's players that, for whatever reason, felt like they cannot return, and they did not want to return. And of course, as ELPA, we support these decisions as well, because I think it's important for each player to feel, on one hand, safe, on the other hand, feel that he is in an environment where he can grow as a player, and of course that his contract can also be respected the way he agreed to it. So currently, I would say that apart from maybe 3 players, the rest of the situation is either completely calm or safe. let's say the players either found terminations and left, the players are playing for the rest of the season, and some players are still waiting to, or like I said, 3 players are still waiting to resolve their contractual situation, and it's kind of still an ongoing thing that we try to assist, and especially from the legal aspect, try to give us our best possible knowledge and opinion, and help the player and the agent this way. In regards to the summer, most of the players who remained in Russia either have expiring contracts, or they agreed that their contracts will expire at the end of this season, even if it was a longer contract. So the question is going to remain, what happens with those few players that have a contract beyond this season? And of course, a lot is connected to what's going to happen to, basketball clubs in general when it comes to EuroLeague and Eurocup beyond this season. So this is an ongoing situation, and unfortunately, as difficult as it is, sometimes we all have to remain patient to see how the situation evolves and what it brings. And then according to that, it's easier to advise the players what steps should be taken. So, now we're in May, and we all know that early July, usually the teams for next season are confirmed. So, the players will have to remain patient to see what happens in connection to Russian teams in EuroLeague next season, even though realistically, we kind of know what kind of answer we can expect, but still the official confirmation has to be done before some players can make further steps in order to leave the Russian clubs and continue their contracts or their careers elsewhere.
Dealing with this Russian basketball crisis, guys, what do you predict for the upcoming future of the major international European competitions? Because both Nikola, both Sunny, you have opponents from Russian market. Let's say, how do you see this whole situation? How the league is handling this crisis in your eyes?
Again, this is something like a COVID, something that is unpredictable, something that you didn't expect it. Something that is nobody thought about in any kind of moment until it's happened. So it's a new type of crisis, new type of. Again, we are now in the mood again of predicting things and doing scenarios. What if? So there is no clear decision yet. It's always you waiting for this decision until you can last moment to make decision until that deadline. In meantime, you're trying to see what is the scenarios that are possible to be done, and I will not say what kind of what I think is going to happen. Of course, some things are realistic, some things. We are also the league that is playing in 9 countries, and there is a different relationship between the countries, and of course some countries are less emotionally involved towards some countries. I'm sure that is you guys from Lithuania. It will be very hard for you to play against CSKA. We had this. I remember this. I had the same issue with Yugoslavia in that time, with the Serbia, but it's different countries will have different moments, and with the Russian teams. Now they are in a situation that is going to be very tough for them to return in the EuroLeague, and public-wise and security-wise, however you want to put this, it's going to be very challenging, and I believe it will take some time until they will be accepted again to be in European competitions. I'm not talking only about EuroLeague. I'm talking about all the sports and all the events in Europe. And again, it's something that not us, not the Russian side, are something that they were prepared for this, and it's going to be again new type of crisis management and unpredictable things that we couldn't predict. How they're going to finish it, how they're going to be managed, to be seen.
Same. I mean, Nikola said it all. It's so much uncertainty and so much of questions that need to be answered. That I think that when I say this, I say it for all. We are all praying and hoping that the war stops for all the people that were hurt. And then for all the reasons that we just mentioned. So basically, I think it's gonna be even bigger issue than it was with the COVID, because only certain countries, in this case Russia, are more hurt by this war, and as so the consequences are big, because as Nikola mentioned, we maybe experienced this in the past with the war in Yugoslavia, and we all know how the games were played, how many hatred was at those games, and these are the emotions that should never be a part of a sports event, and it's really hard to control this type of situations for us as clubs. And honestly, it's very, very challenging to assure, the team that you are able to make the event safe and that everybody feels secure. And this is also one side that, will be very difficult for the future. And, like Nikola mentioned, I think that the damage that was done to the clubs, it's not so easy to repair, because rebuilding a club that was years and years at the highest, standard of European basketball, it's not so easy. It's easy to destroy it in a couple of months. All the last 15, 20 years of the existence and investments that were made are gone, because now there is so many issues on how to bring a player back that it's going to be very, very difficult for them to be competitive and to be at the level that they were used to be before. And this is also something that we will have to see and wait how they are gonna react on this crisis, the clubs themselves.
I will just add that, at the end of the day, we can discuss as much as you want about predictions and about what we think is going to happen, but I think the politics dictates this. I mean, as much as I don't like this view, but I think sports in this moment at least depends on the politics of Europe or of the world, and they're going to dictate how this Russian crisis is going to evolve also on the sports level. And for us, as I said, I think that for Sani and Nikola, of course, it's important to protect their club, and in this changing environment, we know that the Russian market in general was an important partner for everybody in sports. For us, it's about securing the players. First of all, they're feeling safe in their security, and then their contract. So we can only adjust to what's happening in the world. It's not up to us or to our competition organizer to decide these things. At the end of the day, yes, about the competition, but about the situation in the world, it's about the politics, and it's about what the future is going to bring. And I think we're all totally aligned with what Sani said. We all want this conflict to finish. That's the first step, and then we can move forward, not just as sports, but as a society in the world as well.
Gentlemen, we're going to the last stage of crisis, which is the crisis resolution stage. And that means that the successful recovery of an organization or business operations returning to normal. So now, analyzing all the crises you went through in your career so far, what do you remember? What mistakes you did that made you better managers, or what good decisions you took that you were proud of dealing with all these crises, or what the best crisis management examples you saw outside your organization?
I'll start since I finished. I think for me, early on when I jumped into the sports business was, and I'm not just talking about the big crisis, whether it was COVID and so on, but just day-to-day things, was being impatient. I think that comes from me being a player before, because as I said, as a player, you lived in this bubble. I think that as a professional basketball player, you're always used that either the club or your agent or your family, for that matter, would always do things around you in a way that it was done efficiently and fast, so that you could focus on basketball. And you kind of get almost spoiled about that, for example, if you needed a new pair of shoes, you told the club or you told the manager or something, and it was at your doorstep 5 minutes later, if you get my point. So going into sports business, I kind of had the same approach initially, where I was, I think, too impatient and expecting that everything is going to be done quicker. I think as you stay in this business longer, you learn that things don't happen as quick, that the patience is the key, but also persistence is the key. I think if you want to achieve something and it doesn't happen right away, you have to keep on working to get that. Of course, it has to have sense, and you have to know that you're chasing realistic goals. But it is about that. It is about patience, and it is about analyzing and knowing the situation around you to set realistic goals and to persistently chase them. I think that's something that I learned early on, and I didn't have as a sports business manager, or whatever you want to call my role, early on, especially coming from the sports background of playing professional basketball more than 20 years.
Sunny, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me, Nikola?
Yes, I hear you good.
I mean, the general manager never makes mistakes. So as a sports director, I made some mistakes. Joking. I mean, if we analyze, and we did analyze our situation, I think that we are extremely proud on the things I said before, so the way we handled resolutions of the contract, where we showed the capacity, to go beyond business point of the club, so we managed to pay the players, even more for what they were supposed to be getting at that point when the COVID strike. Second thing is this, what Boki just said, just learning how to be patient and learning to work inside of your possibilities, being realistic about the project. This is something that we are extremely proud, and implementing the things that we learned. So basically now we are having this conference, on Zoom, and before most probably we would meet in Kaunas or somewhere, at the table, and we would be discussing, because like Nikola said at the beginning, the pace that we were living before COVID was, something unreal and something that needed to be stopped, and usually you learn on the hard way. And I think that all the society and all the world, had to deal with something as bad as COVID. And I don't want to be rude or anything, but it was inevitable. Something like this had to happen in order for some new rules and some new ideas to be set in place. The most important thing, what I think happened, is rules. With COVID, and especially at the beginning of COVID, there were teams that were somehow using this COVID situation to their advantage, and this is something that for us was not unacceptable. It's not unacceptable in a sports mentality way, because since day one we were always being very transparent and very honest about our situation in the club. Never used the testing purpose to either skip a game or how to say, do our schedule a little bit better, and with rules, this is something that then was really managed well in the second year of COVID, and I think that this is one thing that needs to be put out there, that the organizations, ELPA, EuroLeague, and everybody really analyzed all the leagues and clubs and put in most cases a really good rules, so that the league could be regular, and that there wouldn't be so many how to say, usage of the COVID situation in a negative way, and that's why I think that coming from this situation, in generally, we did a step forward in organization wise, dealing with the crisis and everything.
Yeah, this crisis pull out show to the people many unorganized and unset up things in the basketball in Europe, and helped us to get out of this crisis stronger and much more organized. And this is something, some kind of platform that we build would be a good thing for the future, and the way how we can build a much better organization and much more fun environment. Also, I believe that also with this kind of approach, we will succeed to get much more sport in Europe, entertainment, and less. It's something that that people will be able to connect as something as a very healthy organizations. Because before, as you know, we had news about players were punished for this and this amount of money. We felt that in sport we're like, it sounds like, people committed some kind of crime, and they fell asleep and didn't come for practice, or they lost the game. They lost the game and the club is punishing them. So these kind of things we are getting out of even considerations. Of course, if everything is followed by the rules, and the players, they set up the rules that out of this crisis will make us much more healthier organizations, a healthier approach to this sport, and it will make us look much better and develop us more as an entertainment industry. It's I don't know if you guys, of course, all of you watched yesterday game, Olympiacos and Monaco. It's beautiful. And for us, what's happened in the gym after the game, it's normal. It's part of celebration in Europe. As you saw, Kevin Durant felt like in Iraq. But as much as me and Sunny played in the both teams, Olympiacos and Panathinaikos, we know what is the derbys there. We need to also, of course, we need to keep the European style of this kind of entertainment, but there is much more in this sport that can people enjoy more and bring us much more happiness, and bringing more kids, and come to bring sport more enjoyment, and not like every game is crisis. What we are talking about crisis, but every derby it's some kind of crisis for other side, and should be another side entertainment. And with the setting up so many rules after this crisis, it will relax more people around us, and to relax more fans, and they will not come to the game. We must kill them today. They will come to enjoy the game like they are doing it in other sports, especially in USA. And this crisis could be that step forward towards that we have a great clubs with a great setup rules, and the league that is really set up by the highest standards. And then we have a mess that I always said we have an all-time crisis, because we have so many leagues with so many rules, with 3 different balls we are playing. We are constant. We have a running constant crisis that need to be solved on one way. It will be, but again, this last crisis with COVID put us in the crisis management that we are now solving many things. We are working now. Before the crisis, we didn't have a problems. Like before the COVID, it sounds like we didn't have a problems. Everybody were running, or the all pace with 3 leagues. We played 90-something games. Every 2 days, no more practices. Everything was so messed up, but now we are dealing with many things. This crisis forced us to do and continue to manage the things, and I think this is the good. The good things from this crazy situation is that we are continuing to solve the future problems.
That's a great conclusion, Nicola. Thank you all, gentlemen, for this wonderful time sharing your knowledge and experience in this LKL conference. And I wish you all some time off from crisis.
Thank
This never happened.
Thank you, Donatas, for
Thank you,
hosting
Donatas.
us, and hope to
Good.
talk to you soon, guys.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Tai ką, ačiū visiems šios diskusijos žiūrovams, bet tik niekur nepabėkite, nes LKL konferencija dar nesibaigė. Dar turime vieną pranešimą, kurį pristatys GO3 partnerysčių ir sporto padalinio vadovas Baltijos šalyse, Raimondas Zeps, kuris papasakos apie sporto turinio vartojimo įpročius internete. So, Raimondas, the stage is yours.
Labas, Donatai. Ačiū. Should I just kick off with the slides, or how do you want me to proceed?
Yeah, you can go.
All right. So first of all, hi to everyone listening. I will just try to sort of, well, not maybe too deep, but dig into the change in inevitables, change in sports business as it's taking place right now in front of our eyes. And I would say that the crisis with the pandemics, now obviously with the things happening in Ukraine, I would say it even speeds it up, but the change has been taking place. It is here, and we can see it all over the place, and we can see it in our data as well. I guess 3 words about me, myself, as Donatas presented. I'm currently working at TV3 Group, the largest media house in the Baltics, heading the partnership and sports questions, and obviously working with sports data on daily basis. But previously I've been involved very much into sports marketing. I've worked in different continents, even in sports teams and organizations in Asia, in US, including partnerships with the NBA and with some of the major sports leagues. So this sort of has been not just my job, but my hobby to see where the sports industry is heading, trying to understand the ways, how we have to adapt, what we have to do. And I think the best way for it, there's a split into 3 ages of sports that I really enjoy how it has been separated, and that I like to use as an example. And I have taken it over, and I've been using it thus far, and pretty much that shows or helps us to understand from where we are heading to forwards. And we can sort of split it in 3 ages. The first age that we had was sports showing up as with the industrialization taking place in the world. Obviously, people had more spare time to use, and they started to do sports. So what we saw that the participation into sports grew. It was mostly local. It was mostly athletes participating just for the fun of it. But obviously, when you start doing sports, you become competitive no matter what, whether you're pure amateur or you're a professional. The competitiveness is there. So sports started growing. It brought societies together. You had the first competitions. You had the first competitions within the cities, within the countries. Then you saw that actually multiple countries could compete, and obviously the Olympics, the Olympics as it was at the beginning, started to take a global stage. But nothing is constant. So as popularity led to audience penetration, the advertising started to plan, because there was already a group of people that was interesting for both TVs, for advertisers, and at the end of the day, people started spending more and more time with it and wanted to get paid. So we eventually landed to the second age of sports, which is where we build sports as a business. We started charging money for access to the stadiums. We started TV started influxating money into sports, and everything started growing. So it became commercialized, and with more money being influxed into the sports, it started growing. And And with the professional sort of the paid sports growing, obviously the amateur participation also grew, because I mean that's the driver. You see those basketball players playing on NBA courts, and you want to go out and you want to shoot some hoops. You want to play with your kids. Your kids start competitive basketball and so on and so forth. With the second age of sport, obviously some parts of the sport became self-sustaining, meaning that all ecosystem was fed, but some focused mostly in the short time returns. So basically, all the money that could be brought in short time, not really thinking strategically, was brought in, and obviously the sport was boosted as well, but it never really created an ecosystem. Something that could thrive and live on for a longer period of time. And I think boxing is a great example. The picture of Floyd Mayweather is not there by an accident, because boxing, I mean, with all the historical roots, with all the popularity that it gained, it never became an ecosystem with a logical path. So now it's struggling more and more actually to create these new stars. It's struggling more and more to grow sports. We see what's happening with the amateur part of it, with it being defected from the Olympics, with all the problems in there. And obviously it's a problem now, and it will be a bigger problem even moving forwards. And that's why we see Mike Tyson returning. That's why we see these already old boxers coming back, because that's the thing that can be sold. And when you're not really generating new stars, when the ecosystem is not there, it's obviously hard to bring in. Floyd Mayweather, by the way, is fighting this week, another example, and he's still going to be earning more money than anyone else. You have YouTube celebrities fighting. So then again, so there were two approaches to it, and some did it the right way, some did it the short-term thinking way. But as Heraclitus has said, the only constant life is in life is change. So obviously we did not stay there. The business has been growing, but we are now sort of at a pivotal moment where it will have to change. It will have to move to the next age, and we are not talking about actually two economies that are there to be developed in two different ways. One would be the attention economy, because, well, we now know that audience is the single most important unit of currency. It's everywhere. I mean, if you have subscribers, it's the Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Amazon. I mean, those are some of the biggest wallets in the world, and that's the currency of today. And we are seeing, first of all, that you have to fight for every single customer separately. Also, obviously, the rapid rises in the time that audience spends in different platforms, starting from YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, etc. Also doing some other things. I mean, there's platforms like gaming, there's geocaching and whatever not. So people have just so much more time to spend to address their attention to. And then there's the business economy, where the growth of global sports properties have been driven mostly by broadcasting media rights, and there are signs that these rights have reached high water mark. So that is also another sort of issue to overcome, or rather another challenge that will have to be addressed. If you look at the revenues in sports, we're taking North American market here as an example. You can see that it has been rising quite significantly since 2012 to 2021. So it's not even a 10-year span. It has doubled in size. And I mean, it's good, right? There's more money to be spent in sports. So especially for sports that have built the ecosystem like basketball, there's more money to spend. But then there already have been the first market corrections, and the market corrections are, I mean, they are logical. So if up to 2016-17, we'll get into it a bit later. The classical TVs, linear TV channels, were the ones buying sports rights, and then they were selling those rights to, not those rights, but they were selling those customers that were watching those rights to advertisers, then we are way past that. Like advertising revenues no more can sustain the spending that is there for sports rights, but the right prices still kept going up because new OTT platforms were coming in, and those were ready to overpay just to get the new subscribers in, and that digital platform overpaying actually was the one that continued the influx. But as I said, the corrections are already there. This is a good picture of Big Five leagues and the growth of TV revenues, and you can see that in Premier League it's with minus on the last cycle. In Serie A it's in minus, and this is just simple data. But then when you look at it, Serie A, again, one of the premium properties in Europe, they had to extend their tender for more than half a year to actually end up with the final result of it, and they are earning in the next cycle, which is actually from 21 upwards. They are earning less than they were earning in the previous cycle. French league, League One, another good example. They sold those rights to a company that created a channel, a dedicated League One channel. They missed the first payment of 100 million 3 months into the business, and eventually the let's say second table teams, like the bottom table teams that are very reliable on that money, are actually in a kind of tight spot, because now with that agreement out of the place, they signed a new one which was for less money, and they obviously have already some contracts in place, and they don't have that much money to spend. So those are just some examples, but for those like me who are on daily basis working with the sports standards, we see that the corrections are there, and it's happening even more and more. And obviously it's on the big markets where it's taking place the first, and football is a great example. And what the leagues are doing right now, like La Liga, they, instead of the usual 4-year cycle, they went out for a 6-year cycle on the new tender. Premier League, again, normally they were going for a 3-year cycle. Now they went out for a 6-year cycle because they are trying to get that money that is there, understanding that we are actually at a pivotal point, and the money might not be higher moving forwards. And why is that? Because I mean, the viewing habits have changed. Like if we're looking at, I'm looking at my childhood, obviously it was that one TV screen in household, and if father wanted to watch sports, everyone was watching sports. There was also a limited amount of TV channels, and TV was linear TV channels were the ones that were dictating what we are watching. And then we move forward today, and you see that the reality is everyone has their own screen, everyone has their own interest. So we are, like, if for millennials and older generations, we see that it's a normality to sit 2 hours by TV screen and watch sport event, then for younger audiences, it's something out of this world. Their attention span is not made to sit 2 hours by TV screen and watch sport. And this is creating a trend which is not great for, or rather, it's just disturbing the ways how we consume sports, which is what we are talking here about. So in general, we can put it in 4 phases. We had the linear TV, where pretty much the TV channel was saying, like, you are going to watch this, you are going to like this, and then that's your only choice pretty much. And then pay TV channels came in, so you had more specialized channels. If you were a sports fan, you could tune into I don't know, the Sky Sports, the TVT Sport here in the Baltics. You could tune into those sports channels, and you could watch those, and still you were watching sports channels. So whatever was on those and whatever is still on those, you watch, and that is growing interest in new sports as well. And there's still audience there, and I mean, it's still the biggest thing out there. But since 2015 and 2017, more OTT streaming platforms are coming in, mobile streaming platforms are coming in, and this is where you no longer, basically you're no longer the one in charge saying that you are going to watch this. It's the end user, which is finally making the decision. Okay, either I'm going to watch A or I'm going to watch B, no matter what it is. And there's also the long form, short form having even more role. So not everyone wants to watch full game of basketball. Maybe someone wants to watch a 3-minute highlight. Maybe someone wants to watch a 15-minute highlight. But then again, it's them deciding. It's not the media house or the right holders or right owners even deciding. It's the end consumer that is making the decision. And just to build up on the audience, you can see that the audience is aging quite rapidly, and the sports audience is aging not because, not because it's aging. We are not bringing in a new audience, and we are not doing it that successfully because simply the younger audience has so many more options how to spend their time, and that creates a problem looking into the future. Like, this is a good chart where you can see what has happened in 16 years since 2000 to 2016 with the average audience. And here I wanted to actually select out NBA, which has been very successful since actually already early 2000s with working more on younger generation, on younger audiences, on attracting them, on seeing that there's a trend in the future to have different ways of consuming that sport. And what you can see here is that NBA, the average age in 2000 was 40. In 2006, it was 40. In 16, it was 42. And in 2022, if you look at the chart, which is a little deep dive into the NBA average audience, you can see that actually the average audience has remained the same. And they're a good example on how to expand sports. And again, we'll get into NBA a bit later, but how to expand sports experience in multiple generations. What we see with Gen Z, and these numbers are quite disturbing for someone who wants to do things the same way as it has been done for the past 10, 20 years. We see that, first of all, Gen Z less likely is identifying themselves as sports fans, and also they are much less likely to watch sports often or even never to watch than millennials and older generations. So it's a huge loss of attention for also sports brands, and it will have to reinvent somehow themselves quite quickly. Otherwise, the younger audience is not there, and then looking 20 years from now, the generation that is currently watching sports in the way how we consume it right now will pretty much, not 20 years, maybe let's say 50 years, it will be dead. Sounds harsh, but it's just the reality, and there's not going to be a new audience coming in to substitute it. So we are arriving to the third cycle, or to the third age of sports, where it has to diversify its revenues, and it has to adapt from an over-reliance on broadcasting and broadcasting fees to actually become a full-rounded media business. And I will repeat that it has to be a full-rounded media business, because that's what actually sports is. It's not sports as it used to be in the first stage. It's an entertainment business. And I like to actually draw parallels with the music business. If to become popular, 50 Cent had to be on MTV back in my youth, then today you don't have to be on MTV. So it's not the producers or the TV selecting who's going to be the next star. Everyone has their own chance, and it doesn't matter whether it's in this case sports or my example with music. You can have your social media. You can participate in different events like the X Factor or whatever not, and basically you can create your own image, and you can sell your music through Spotify, through Apple Music, but it's very much different from what it used to be. So we see that it's not TV anymore creating the stars. It's not TV creating the follower base. It's so much more. It's social media. It's these platforms. Those are the ones that are thriving. And sports, you could say, is next in line to also transit from being over reliant on broadcasters to actually being reliable on themselves, on how they sell themselves, on how they market themselves, on how they PR themselves, and what's going to happen. What's going to happen next? So, in general, we are looking at very fragmented reach going forwards. When it was just the free TV linear channels, again, like all the audience was there. All the audience was watching sports there, and I mean, it was easy to reach the end consumer, either for sports organization in general or for their partners, their sponsors, who obviously spend more money on it, or who spent more and more money because the audience was there. So going forwards, the sports world will need to develop a direct relationship with the end customer, with the fans, and we'll have to develop new business models around e-commerce, subscriptions, memberships, and you can see that teams are doing it more and more, and it's just going to be the future. You see that the monetization ways will also change, and there's a challenge here as well. I think I have it in the I have it in the next slide. But in general, this is what I already spoke about a bit earlier. You see consumers still engaging into sports, but doing it much different. Some are playing esports. Some are going to the gym themselves, or riding a bike themselves, or running themselves as a hobby. Some are consuming sports on social media, and we have so many platforms. And you still have the ways of obviously consuming live content as well. But then again, it has shifted from TV screen to iPads, iPhones, MacBooks. You can be on the go, you can be at home, you can be in bed, still lying in the morning watching a rerun of the last night's NBA match, or reviewing Olympiacos Monaco game, or whatever not. So we have so many touch points where we can meet the fan, and we have to actually address them all. And in the best case scenario, it says here, they will be incremental. In the worst case scenario, they will be serving as a substitution for the traditional way of following live sports. But there is a problem. And this is a problem rather for smaller sports businesses, for smaller clubs, smaller leagues, because obviously those don't have that much money to spend. And then if we're looking at same NBA, they are spending a lot of money, and they have been spending for decades a lot of money in engaging in these activities, and that obviously gives them returns as well. But these new media adoptions are actually often outpacing monetization, meaning that you have, I have this example here with audio content. So you have radio as old media. Radio is simple. I mean, it's on radio, you sell advertising, quite straightforward. But then you have the new media like podcasts, which then again, you are just learning on ways how to get money out of there, or rather you are starting a podcast, you still need to drive the audience. So the money is not there. You have to invest. And while you are investing and hoping that it will get you returns, the world is again changing, and you have new platforms, you have new ways of people consuming sports. So you always have to adapt and hope for the best. So currently the monetization follows. It doesn't lead or equal the engagement, which will be a challenge, definitely will be a challenge, especially for, again, sports teams or leagues that are not ready to spend that much. That NBA example, I said I would be coming back. So it started with creating in-house video production company. I mean, every one of us have seen highlights from last night matches. Every one of us have seen top episodes, whatever not is available on social media. What NBA understood, so many other leagues missed was the value of also player-generated content and team-generated content, and they also understood that sports, again, in this third age, sports is a part of entertainment business. So the media channels that are running are mostly focused on lifestyle rather than basketball itself, and that grabs new attention. That grabs attention on to new consumers that are maybe on social media, are in for style, are in for hype and other things. But the lesson that we can take from NBA is that you have to perceive your brand like an entertainment hub rather than as a team that is a team of competing athletes. And on the right side, you can actually see the Gen Z trends and their interest in sports. So all adults versus Gen Z. And you can see that NBA actually has Gen Z even more engaged than all adults in general. And this is done through the cross-platform engagement that they are providing. So out of those 47% of Gen Z, I'm guessing that it's very likely that most have not even seen a single full NBA game, especially out of US and Europe, where the hour difference is quite significant, but they are still engaged. And EuroLeague did a research a few years ago, which conducted that NBA is twice as popular in Europe than is twice as popular in Europe than EuroLeague, which sort of blows my mind away. Like, you have the most premium competition here, and we had just now 3 ex-players. I remember watching Panathinaikos, Maccabi, Barcelona, and all of them playing, and I was. Me being young, I was with my mouth open, grabbing every second of every game. But nowadays, you just get so much more content, so much more entertaining, and what the most important, lifestyle content available from overseas, as they are investing more and more. Then that those brands are growing, the value of the brands are growing, and you can see it very well here. What thrives actually in the Baltics or everywhere is the social events. So to round it all up, it's about stories, and this again sort of plays together with that storytelling. You have to remember, like, sports is about stories, and the example that I like to give is if you go, I don't know, somewhere near a football pitch, and there's 11 players playing against 11 players, you don't really care. But if someone told you that from that one team, goalkeeper slept with the other team's offensive player, then obviously there's interest in it, and you would stop and you would watch how it actually plays out, because that's the story behind it. And there are those examples with the Formula One and Drive to Survive, how it actually rebirthed the whole sport, and how it has changed. And I mean, it's not about Netflix series, it's about the stories, and those stories again are driving the brand value. And you don't have to sell just the live broadcast, you sell merchandise, you sell all licensing impossible. So there's, again, so many opportunities given to you if your brand is interesting and if the story is there. So stories give you a large sense of context and infuse that information with a sense of meaning and emotional resonance. Like, that's the message there. And if you are looking at some of the examples, I mean, Ball family, those guys had not played a single game in the NBA, and they were already one of the most popular basketball players in the world. You have New Zealand. I mean, how many people have actually watched New Zealand play a full rugby game? Probably way less than have seen videos of haka and know the traditions that are behind the All Blacks team and everything involved with it. And then if we're looking locally, we on TV3 sports on Go3, we are showing the premium sports every day, and still you have Rimkenzo, and I hope the guy is not mad at me. I don't remember what's his name. I remember him as a fitness coach or something. But that fight generated the most views in Lithuania, overpassing basketball, Žalgiris, overpassing professional boxing fights, overpassing other things that would normally, like if you think on a sanity level, you would think like that should be like, that's a premium thing and that should be watched. Like, no, there's a story here. They had a beef on social media. It was local, it was interesting, and that actually was the one that brought the most interest. So again, we are talking about the storytelling that is the most important in sports and most important in entertainment as well. And then also you have the local patriotism, and it's very important when you're looking at SWOT, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Like for sports, it's been like something very, very far away. Like, what is sport? I mean, you have a company to run, then do your SWOT. Like, it's not for sports. But in reality, sports has to start thinking more and more as a business. It has to compete for attention with the other entertainment and with other entertainment forms. So it's not sports, theater, concerts. It's also other entertainment entertainment forms that it has to compete with now, especially for the younger generation. So you have to think about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. You can even start with Porter's 5, and I mean use the business tools to decide on what is that story, what is that strength that you can go out into the market and you can sell as an experience. So to conclude, to survive sports, we'll need to find new ways of delivering value, and we'll have to balance the commercialization with the community, and we'll need to build a media capability that allows it to thrive. And value will get delivered differently, and that is the future. So the adoption is the key. And as I said at the very beginning, COVID and then things that are happening now in Ukraine, it just speeded up the process, but it was inventable, and it had started already way before.
So Raimons, thanks a lot for your presentation. I'm a big fan of this storytelling potential. So tell me for fun, if you would do the Netflix series, what it would be about related to basketball?
Related to basketball? Well, I mean, there's already some, again, it's a question of audiences, right? You have to work with different audiences, and like one does not fit all. So you have wives, right? That is a different story. You have, there's so much unknown about the everyday life of an athlete that people would want to know, they would want to get into. And I think showing real emotions, showing emotions after losses, after wins, that would be the one thing that would create a connection, the bridge between the end consumer and the sports brand.
Yeah, and Raimons, you also showed us this NBA example, the way they do things to keep young generation attracted to the NBA, and also the way they adjust to this Gen Z needs. What do you think, what could work here in Europe? What could be adjusted to small markets like Baltic countries?
So I think the first strength is the local patriotism, and that is definitely one to be used. And we can get we have so many examples, starting from the US, going back to Europe, that you have the local teams created for local people, and it's like a small celebration. Every game is like a small celebration, and I think working with that target group that you have around you, that is the key. And once you grow it big, then the whole product should grow big as well. And you can't, I think it's a good example. Like LKL is doing a great job in marketing itself right now. So everything is sort of growing together. If we are looking at other leagues where some of the teams don't really even have a dedicated person for PR, for marketing, and then some teams are trying to do something around it. Like you can't really build a sustainable league that way. With the NBA, I can give an example. As when I was working with it was in Orlando with Magic. I actually, for the first time, I found out that NBA has several persons hired that are working directly with teams. So basically, it comes bottom down. NBA has these marketing strategies that they want to implement. They are aligning those with teams, and they have these persons as consultants. So you have, for one consultant, you have 3, 4, 5 teams, whatever not, and they are working together daily with the highest level. So with vice presidents of marketing, with the heads of communication departments, and they are implementing those same solutions everywhere. So that's why also the league is successful, that everyone's doing something, and that way, and they are aligning what they are doing, and that's why the league is growing all together as well.
Okay, Raimund, so thanks a lot for your thoughts. Thanks a lot for your presentation. Ačiū visiems pranešėjams, ačiū visiems, kad žiūrėjote. Tai buvo LKL konferencija. Mažiau krizių visiems, bet gero jų valdymo, jeigu su jomis susidursite. Iki kitų pasimatymų.